Let's do it.
Cool. Welcome back to the Movie Well Marathon. We are at the end of the current Planet of the Apes trilogy before the next one really gets started. Technically, I think tonight. At the time of recording. This will come out probably weeks later. But yeah, we're on War for the Planet of the Apes. So great. Fantastic. We did forget to mention...
I'm Mac.
Oh, sorry. I'm Andrew. That's Mac. We did forget to mention at the end of the last one, they did get in contact with the military, which is where this one kind of picks up. The apes are now in full-blown war with the military, and that's where we pick up.
Human military, which I just want to say, I noticed their symbols right away. The Alpha and the Omega.
You noticed that?
Tell me you saw that too.
Of course I did, but like there were Easter egg videos I've watched that don't notice that there's the Alpha Omega symbols from beneath the Planet of the Apes. People don't point that out, and I was like, yes, absolutely. It's not only just on their helmets; that's in their speech. And Easter egg videos didn't point that out.
It's the graffiti in their camp, and we'll talk about it later, but the gas tank. We gotta talk about the gas tank later.
Anyway, okay, so I don't remember exactly how long after. It's not quite a year, maybe a year?
It might
2 years?
Because they were looking for him for a certain period of time, but I did not write down.
I want to say, at max, it's 2 years, because Cornelius is a little bit older. But it's been a while. They've been fighting, and Caesar's not having it. And we get, again, a fantastic opening sequence of a hunt. This time it's the military guys, the humans, hunting down some apes. And it's
not just humans.
It is not just humans. And see, again, when I watched this with the partner, she thought that when, what's his name? Preacher is targeting the apes on the horses, and then a gorilla grabs his shoulder, she was like, got your ass! Because she thought they snuck up on him and that he was about to die.
For a moment.
I don't remember what I thought, because it's been a while since I can't remember what was going on when I first watched this movie, but I think I picked up on it quicker that he was like with them, and I was like, you son of a bitch.
No, because they show him in the background a little bit first, like it's just like the shape of a gorilla like sidling behind him, and I go, oh, all right, the apes got him. But then they like make the picture a little bit like further out, and you realize that he's wearing their military garb, and I went,
what is going on?
Oh,
I did not predict like why. Like we'll get to it in a second. I figured that they were captured and they were being like tormented or something, but like they got.
I thought they were like shipped in from another source.
Oh,
I thought they were trained outside.
Interesting. But yeah, we open with a great, big old crazy action sequence, and it is pretty brutal.
It is,
and it was interesting to see how the guys with the machine guns got taken out with bows and arrows, but that's always fun. And then we get this awesome intro to Caesar from his perspective, watching all the apes react. Also, all these apes that are injured, and it's so sad. And
we get like right off the bat, we get a scene with Caesar making Caesar choices where he's got prisoners. He has a little council where he talks with them. He tries to learn stuff about them, and then he goes, yeah, all right, disarm you, tie you up, put you on the back of horses, get out of here. My message is of peace. Leave us alone, and we'll leave you alone.
Yeah, this is though where this is the beginning. We don't get into it until a little bit later, but this is the first choice that starts bringing back the Magneto Charles thing between him and Koba, because all of his peaceful decisions are heavily questioned throughout this movie, which of course we will circle back to a couple of times.
Decisions,
for sure. But his Charles decisions are questioned because of who he is, not because of whether or not they'd be fucking effective in war. Like, come on, Caesar, watch an X-Men movie. But yes, we get.
No, I mean. It's Caesar genuinely trying to be like, let's stop fighting. If we keep fighting, this is never going to end. You kill me, then my people try to kill you, and then you try to kill my people again.
Right, just
like,
to give us the woods. That's all we want. We just want the trees.
Yeah.
We speak for the trees. It's fine. And we get the reveal. Hey, you don't have to point out all my references. But we get this reveal from Red which I believe that's what they call him. The humans call him Donkey.
Yeah, Red Donkey.
Red Donkey.
And the credits give him Red Donkey as his name. So.
Caesar says that the apes that follow Koba now work for the humans because they are attracted to power and strength. Yeah. And Donkey then says it's not because he fears Caesar, and he gives like kind of, I don't exactly remember what he says, but he gives like a different explanation. But I always thought it sounded kind of stupid. Because it was like, what do you think they're gonna do to you, dude? Like, what is your goal here? You're being kind of dumb. And he realizes that in the end. But like throughout this movie, it's like, what is your goal, dude?
Again, I think they're intentionally connecting a low level of intelligence with prejudice, or with the desire for personal safety, like
self-preservation.
Yeah, self-preservation. I mean, there's a reason why Weasley characters always put themselves first, right? Like that, the desire to be safe and the willingness to do whatever it takes to feel safe are very closely connected. Obviously, it's kind of obvious when you put it that way. But
I think what sums up your point perfectly is what the Weasley character in The Mummy says, the Brendan Fraser one, is it's better to be at the right hand of the devil than in his path, something along those lines. Yeah. So I think that's exactly what Red is probably doing. But his explanation still sounded stupid. We're also introduced to my new favorite character for 30 seconds, Winter, an albino gorilla. So cool.
You want to know what my first thought was?
They're going to kill him because it's a gorilla?
No. Well, although there is that. And that shows up later too.
Yeah, exactly.
But multiple times in this movie. Holy cow. Winter is a visually iconic lieutenant. Koba is a visually iconic lieutenant. And when I saw Winter, my first thought was, this is Koba's replacement. He is equally, if not more, flashy. I wonder how this one will go. And like in the first 5 minutes,
immediately
we find out he's a betrayer. And I was like, wow, okay, so I just should never pick anyone who has a flashy sense of style to be someone I trust.
Yeah. It was like, we do, skipping ahead a little bit to when they confront him, because we find out that he sold them out, told the colonel, the new villain, where their camp was. He clearly is doing this again out of self-preservation and fear. Because as soon as Blue Eyes and Rocket come back, and they're like, hey, we found this new place, Winter was like, let's go right now, let's leave. Because like, I interpreted that as he's already revealed, like he's already betrayed them, but now he sees an out. And he's like, okay, if we could leave now, then everything will be fine. No one will get hurt. Great. Love it. Awesome.
That's funny. That's not how I had interpreted it, but that makes sense.
That's how I took it, because that's why he was so aggressive and angry, because it's not like he wanted them to leave so they could run into the colonel's hands. The plan was already for the colonel to be there that night. So if they leave before he gets there, then perfect. They don't know where they went. Winter's in the clear, everyone's alive, because like he is clearly upset and sad. He does not approach Caesar with aggression, or like, because Red looks at him with animosity. Winter was ashamed, he was sad, like it was all the emotions. He clearly isn't a bad guy.
Which honestly was a good way to portray that character, because we haven't had a regretful traitor yet in this part of the series.
But like, damn it, why couldn't you do that with Luca and give us the cool white gorilla to be the new, like one of the new cool characters for the bulk of the movie? Like, why the heck not, man? And then you go and you kill Luca anyway. Why are you killing all the gorillas? This trilogy is terrible to gorillas. And I feel like it's
kinder in terms of portrayal, but harsher in terms of survival rate.
I almost felt different. They're making up for how awful they were in the original movies. But it's rough. We can't, like, when Luca goes, it hurts. It's so sad.
It does.
And she puts a little flower on him. We're jumping all over the place. I'm sorry. We should bring it back. We can bring it back. Okay, so we're in this new base, awesome cave.
It's really cool. It's super so visually cool. We only get it for like 30 seconds.
I know. And then Blue Eyes and Rocket are back, and they're like, hey, we found this cool place. It's maybe a desert. Is it like maybe a soft reference to maybe future movies? I don't know. You decide.
That seems like it.
Yeah, we'll talk about it later. Then we find out that Blue Eyes kind of has a mate. Cool. Good for you, dude.
Yeah, Lake.
Lake, she's cool. And then we get this super thrilling, gut-wrenching, just tear-inducing, spooky-ass thrilling sequence of soldiers infiltrating the base at night and Caesar picking up on it. When he goes and grabs the cord out of the waterfall and lets it go because he knows he can't let them know that he knows, but he knows there's people in his house. Like, oh, that's terrifying. It's so good.
And then and that's such a great way to put it. There's people in his house, right? Like, he is responsible for every single life in this cave.
Mm-hmm.
And so he tells Blue Eyes to watch out for his mom and his brother. And he goes and he gets his soldiers and he's mounting the defensive.
Mm-hmm.
And then he hears on the radio
King Kong is dead. I love that there is a code, though.
Yeah. Well, okay. In the code, honestly, we should talk briefly about the code because it's clever.
It is. It is. Yeah, and it is.
Like,
it's a little
friends and
right.
King Kong.
It's a little ambiguous, though. Like I would say that's not quite as. I already lost the comparison, but like using that code, if you're not super into movies, you don't immediately know what that means, because it could mean a couple of things. And because again, if you can jump to it means Caesar, and we're watching Caesar listen to it, we know it's not Caesar. So at first you're like, okay, well then who do they mean? Then you make the jump to.
No, I knew immediately.
Oh, I knew too. I was like, oh no, they didn't, and they did. And it was like, again, it's one of those things where though it's Planet of the Apes, it's painful as hell. But narratively and just real world wise, it makes perfect fucking sense. There's no reason the Colonel wouldn't have thought that was Caesar. It was just honestly, it's so good. And then when he turns around and sees him and realizes like a couple of like, oh man, I fucked up. And then the second like, oh man, I fucked up. And he jumps at him. Oh, the pain in his eyes, the fear in his eyes, like. So good. It's so good, and it's heartbreaking because we're into Blue Eyes by now.
I couldn't write notes down. I wrote, "I'm crying. I hate this."
Yes, it's.
And that's all I could say.
It's so rough because
I really, really hate it. I mean, it's perfect, but it's terrible.
It's terrible.
And
yeah, it's rough. It's really
I
rough.
mourned. I was dealing with it. I was going through it.
I also this is something I always kind of get weirdly attached to. When Caesar bumps into the one gorilla on guard, he asks specifically to go get Rocket. Like, I like that he is just, we are back to where we were in Rise. That Rocket is the pal. He's the buddy. Like Maurice's brother / dad / mom / teacher / wizard, but Rocket is the bro. Rocket's the one we're going into battle with. He was before. We moved away from that because we needed Koba for the betrayal to feel better, and now he's back, man. They're Batman and Robin, or Batman and Batman, depending on how you want to look at it. And then, yeah, it's heartbreaking, and, like, Cornelius is missing. We know what that means. You can't kill the little one. But it's still so sweet.
I wasn't sure. I thought for a moment he might have been kidnapped. I was...
Well,
yeah.
I mean, in the end, he is, but yeah.
Oh, yeah. I was like, I couldn't believe it. Like, the moment I saw the scopes going down the waterfall, I went, oh no, this is going to be so bad.
Yeah.
But I didn't think it was going to be so personal.
Yeah.
Like, it was targeted, which was smart on the human's part and makes sense. Like, you don't go in trying to wipe out everybody, especially if your target is just the leader. You
right,
go to
yeah, just take off the head of the snake. That's all we're doing. And
they had insider information, so they knew exactly where he should be. And Caesar went in to do his job, so he wasn't there. And all that's left is his family.
Yep.
And
also, top 5 things that would make me shit myself. If I'm hanging off a rope and the angriest chimpanzee in the world is crawling up that rope, like, that was terrifying to see Caesar going crazy. Ooh. I don't know if I would have been able to compose myself enough to cut that rope like he did. Damn. Anyway, we're okay. We got to move on.
Yeah.
So
that sets this whole movie off on a different tone altogether.
yes. Oh,
because
absolutely.
the previous ones are either like self-discovery journeys, or they are social dramas, essentially, where they're trying to figure out how to run a society peacefully in cooperation, or just alongside another society. But this one is a revenge story. It is
and then
Caesar going after the guy who killed his family, and then because circumstances, it gets bigger.
Yeah. It's crazy. Yeah. Also, I will say there's a lot of good to talk about, but I do need to address. This is definitely not as strong as Dawn. There are some things that kind of slip through the cracks, I think. And one of them is you guys go to the new place. I'm going on my revenge mission. My heart has fallen into darkness. Lake, take care of Cornelius. It's great. Maurice, Luca, Rocket, take care of them. Great. See you guys later. And then, of course, we know that Rocket, Luca, and Maurice are going to go join, because we need Maurice because he's Maurice. We need Rocket because he's Rocket. We need Luca because the gorilla has to die. So, but here's the thing, though. You sent the apes on the new, migration to the new place, and the other guy that knew where to go is dead. So what did you expect to happen when they got lost and captured? They say, the colonel says they came across them by accident. Fine. Write whatever you want. Where were they gonna go? They didn't know where to go. Because Rocket's off with Caesar.
I missed that point, but yes, you're totally right about that.
Yeah, a little bit. So they're...
Although I from the outset here, I do have to say, I think I was more emotionally invested in this one than I was in Dawn.
Absolutely. And I think, again, like and be invested in whatever. It's just, it's not as airtight as I think Dawn is. So, another good example with this one, where you may not have caught it the first time, because I didn't, which is totally fine. Now we're on our mission, right? Caesar, Maurice, Luca, Rocket. We're on our way, and we come across the first camp, and we kill Winter. Heartbreaking, sad. Caesar is now crazy because he's accidentally killed an ape, but now he's no better than Koba, ? And he's so riddled with grief, he's hallucinating, and blah, 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 blah. Then they come across this guy in the woods, in this camp, and Caesar's looking at him from afar through binoculars, and Rocket asks him a question in sign language that Caesar then responds to in English.
There were some slips with the sign language in this one. I will give you that one.
Caesar didn't see the question. But hey, whatever, man. Whatever. Because, again, this is one of those movies, though, where these things you're not going to fixate on because it's not the point, and there's other things that are taking focus. But it is still examples of we weren't paying as close attention. We got so into some of these other things. I honestly think
this one, because the sign language is so prominent in this film, it's mostly apes talking to other apes, so it's a lot of sign language. I don't think the sign language is super polished. I don't know. I assume someone has done some examination of how ASL accurate the sign language is, and it's not like these movies went out to be totally 100% ASL accurate, but some of these, some of the sentences are really complex, and they have three soft
it's
gestures.
Definitely,
I'm
there's definitely interpretation, and I think the two examples are when Lake is just holding a rock and she's just making ape sounds, and they're putting subtitles. Okay, so now is there just an ape language? Now, in the past, in Rise of the Planet of the Apes, there was apes alone weak, apes together strong, and all he does is break a stick. That's not ASL for apes, apes apart weak. It's metaphorical, there's interpretation, it's conveying what he's thinking, but Lake just looking at people and going to say, everyone work together now so they don't kill Caesar. That's not what you said. Don't lie to me. But anyway, there's not that many examples. It's still a phenomenal movie, I would say. But there's a couple of those things, just a few. But now we're in this.
And then they encounter the guy in the cabins, right?
And Caesar's on a new arc. doesn't hesitate.
I mean, to be fair, the guy was pulling a gun.
He was, but he Han Solo'd his ass. Greedo didn't even get the shot off. And Maurice is definitely, I think, where we're all at, which is like, shit, he's gone. And then we find our new human character, one of the main three, and our revealed later new Nova, which I personally really liked. I liked this homage to Nova. I thought it was cute, and I love that Maurice is a big advocate for her. Him lowering Caesar's gun and paying enough attention to her to realize that something's wrong. Yes, like Maurice doing what you said last week, the maternal figure, the parental figure in general, like doing his thing.
The emotional intelligence, again, high. He knows both that Caesar's going through it and is making non-Caesar choices because he's going through it, and he also knows that this little girl like needs help. And I love his line where Caesar says, "We can't take her."
Yeah.
And he goes, "I understand. I know. But I can't leave her."
I know, yeah, it's very much him.
Yeah. It's a great moment because like it forces it again puts the philosophical and moral lines of the characters up front. That is the conflict. And Caesar has to decide, I either part with Maurice here or I allow a concession to something that I like I have to allow a part of my mission to have a little like side quest element to it, you know, and that's not what he wants right now, but he does allow it because he values Maurice more than he values his revenge quest.
Right.
And, you know, it's our first hint of a little redemption, now that we didn't think we were going to get it, but it's there.
Also, I find I love all of Nova's interactions with the apes. Like later on when she gives Caesar food and water, and her fun little interactions with hold off because we're jumping all over, but I am curious. We don't, that I can recall, get an explicit... No, I lied already. Sorry, never mind. I was going to say we don't get like a full-on interaction between Nova and Rocket, but Rocket does essentially softly sacrifice himself for her.
Yeah.
So I thought maybe the interaction between Luca and her wasn't so much a look at this calm, peaceful character that encourages these lovely interactions with the apes, interaction like example of human and ape peace. I thought maybe the Luca interaction was just straight up a King Kong reference because it's this little blonde girl and this great big beast that is brought down to his like most vulnerable
think about
spot.
The time traveler and like the little girl that the time traveler makes friends with in the future.
Oh, okay.
She's a blonde, small thing that doesn't talk very much. She has a fondness for flowers, and she likes him because he saved her.
Yeah.
Like, and I know like that's not really what they were doing in this film, and plenty of little innocent female characters have a thing for flowers because it's symbolic and metaphorical. We understand it in the way that we communicate in stories. But knowing that the first version of the story was definitely influenced by the time machine, and knowing that her name is a take from that first character, it feels connected.
Maybe a little. I don't think that's a big stretch. Like, I think it works.
I feel like it's a stretch, but I'm gonna go ahead and like make that stretch and say that's how I'm gonna think about it. Yeah.
Oh, in that case, I want to say it's both, because I think in that moment with Luca where he puts the flower in her hair, like it's just him. I can't help but think that's got to be like a soft little King Kong nod.
Sure. These guys are nerds enough that they could do both.
Oh, absolutely, they are. Okay, we gotta bring it a little bit. So now Caesar and the gang, they come across gunshots. What the heck? They're not at them. What is it? And they find the 3 bloody corpses in the snow. Ew, weird, gross. And this is where the first time I watched it, I was like, what the hell is this? Because first I was like, okay, maybe they're traitors. Then, of course, the blood coming out of their noses, I'm like, this is making me uncomfortable. What is happening?
I was very confused.
This
like they had like snow covering them and everything.
Yeah, this subplot that ends up becoming kind of part of the main plot. I love it. It's brilliant. I want to save it for a second because now we get introduced to our new ape character, which I love so much. I love him. Bad Ape
he's fantastic.
is amazing.
Bad Ape is amazing. Yeah.
His like
I was
introduction.
a little thrown by his design at first, but I think it works really well for the character.
I was at first thrown because these films have been so good about not having a comic relief character, and that is very much what he is, but it's done in a believable way. But it's what he represents in the world that gets me so fucking excited. Because the way they introduce how these apes are intelligent in the first two movies, it's like, okay, yeah, that's all good and fine. And I realize we're only really hanging out in San Francisco, but this virus was contagious. What does that mean? So when Caesar figures out, and Bad Ape straight up says it, human got sick, apes got smart, that means it applied to the whole world. And for the first time, it really has been a planet of apes. Because in the first few films, we're hanging out in like one little valley of mountainous region. In the Tim Burton one, it's maybe 100 apes that fell out of a space station. In Conquest and Battle and all that, it's like these little chunky areas. But in these movies, they found a way that it does affect the whole world, which is wild to think about. I love that.
You say that because I mean, obviously that is the implication. Like, it's not subtext at all. Like, he says we got smart, which means everybody got smart. But there's a little like fact off to the side. I like to read those little like facts on Prime Video, the X-ray stuff, and that's very intentional. And they did that so they could set up future sequels that have interactions with those other groups.
Oh, dude, I'd watch a whole series about that, like how like the apes in the New York Zoo or wild apes, like how it just starts happening. Like, I'd be so into that, and I love that. I do like how they realize, like the characters realizing that as well, like Rocket realizing he can't speak sign language, how they don't recognize him, like, and how he's such a wacky little dude, and they're all these war-torn veterans at this point.
Yeah. Bad Ape is like if somehow Smeagol never got the ring but still lived that long. Like,
yes. He's so tragic when he talks about his kids and how, like, he looks weird, but then when he takes his coat off for Nova and he just looks injured and sickly and malnourished.
And that's the moment that you kind of changes your opinion of him, because like first you see him stealing stuff and you think he's a human. Yeah. And like I did, at least. I thought it was weird that we weren't seeing his face, but I was like, that's clearly a human. What human are we about to see? Right. And then like he like gives back the things and he walks out like this, and then he reveals that he's an ape, and I go, oh, and then I go, oh, character design. And then he takes his coat off and he says cold, and he's like pointing at Nova, who's like barely shivering over in the corner.
I know. It's like, dude, you have no hair.
Yeah. And that's the moment where you realize this character is not going to be a conflict. He's not going to be a problem, because he has no hair, and yet he's noticed this little girl over in the corner who's not an ape, shivering just a little bit, and he's willing to give the coat off his back so that the girl can be warm.
Right. Like, it is
so sweet.
It's a natural comedic progression. He puts on the silly vest. 1, because he gave up the coat. 2, because he needs it. And then when he does his little thumbs up and he's wearing this ridiculous blue vest, it's hilarious. But it's like it's genuine. It's so it's so good. And I don't think it clashes with the tone too much, because the tone for this one is heavy, and Bad Ape is not super heavy. But like his interaction with Caesar, where they talk about his past and what happened, he is heavy. It's just he's so different from Caesar's camp that the contrast creates the comedy. And it's brilliant. I love it. Ugh.
Well, and it's good to have these characters interact with that character at this moment in the story too. Because the heaviness of the story is like, how do I put this? A person who is on the path to revenge is completely wrapped up in anger and grief and probably some guilt. And they are, at their moment, they are self-centered. When Caesar has to take a moment to interact with this ape who is different from him, who has a different story, who opens up a world of possibilities, he has to think outside himself again for a moment. And then he gets the information that he needs to continue on his quest. So it does focus him in a little bit. It becomes helpful to the story, but it also forces him, kind of like Nova, to take a moment to separate back out of that revenge mindset, think about things from a larger standpoint, reevaluate what his priorities are. And then he does move back into the revenge thing, because someone killing your child and your wife is not something you get over in a day. But it's still just, it's something that forces him outside of that bubble for a little bit, where you can see that he can't be that one track mind killer kind of character. Like he can't really do it.
Yeah, no, and I agree. I think they did really, really well with them. I think also, maybe, I don't know if this is exactly what your point was or if it just adds to your point. I think without Bad Ape, it would have felt like too much. Like, Maurice is not someone you go to for a lot of pep in your step, shall we say. And Rocket is like, he's Sam Wilson. He does what Caesar does, just slower. And Caesar is on a murder mission. So without Bad Ape, maybe it would have been too heavy, if that makes sense. Especially with the villain, which we've not talked about yet, which we're... I know. We're basically there.
Performances in these films are...
He does very well. Yeah. So yeah, Bad Ape leads them to the camp. They find the camp. They kill Luca, because of course. And Nova reacts in a way that I would like to talk about a little bit later if we have time.
Sure. We can talk about it now.
Well, we can't talk about it yet. We gotta get to it.
We'll come back to it.
Yeah, but Luca's dead, because of course. Oh, a brief moment. Round of applause for Luca's horse, because holy shit, man. Look, in Rise of the Planet of the Apes, when they reveal Caesar on a horse, it's like, holy shit. And when they ride up to the compound in Dawn, it's like, oh damn. But when you've got a big ass gorilla specifically riding on a white horse, it's like, that horse is not being paid enough. Because gorillas, he's not... Look, if you haven't seen this movie and you're listening for some stupid reason, and you know that gorillas range in lots of different sizes, technically, Luca isn't a little gorilla. He's not Turk. He's Kerchak. And he's riding on this horse that is the same size as him. And then later, they, like, lose one of their horses, and it's like... They're doubling up, like it's him and Rocket or him and Bad Ape, and it's like, no, that horse is doing it all, man. He's doing it all. I don't know about like horse anatomy, but their legs are designed like fingers. That horse would not be standing with a gorilla on the back. There's not a chance. Not a chance in heck. I just find that funny that they really, again, maybe we weren't paying super close attention to this, because not only does it kind of look ridiculous, it is just straight up ridiculous that Luca is riding a horse. Anyway, they make it to the camp. Luca's gone. Caesar gets captured, finds out that all the apes have been captured. The kids are in one big cage. All the other apes are in another big cage. The crosses. The crosses, yes. On crosses. Oh, that's how we find out, which is tragic. Heartbreaking. Like, for a moment, I thought maybe it was just, like, some apes, but they had the paint. They paint on them. Yes, they tell us. So that was a good it's our cut. Apes, yes. But again, that's where I come back to, like, well, no shit, they didn't know where they were going. But whatever. Caesar gets captured, and we get face-to-face meet with the Colonel for the first time. Absolute son of a bitch kind of guy. Quick little note, because this is not discussed in the movie. This is discussed in, like, one of the novelizations. It's implied loosely because of where the world goes. All of the human characters that we do meet die in one way or another. Will definitely dies because he got the virus. But what happens to Malcolm? When the soldiers arrive, Malcolm goes to the Colonel to try to convince him to make peace with Caesar. And the Colonel shoots him then and there because he sided with the apes.
Oh my god, no!
Yep, the Colonel, man. Real rough villain. And so then we kind of, if we were to kind of skip ahead a little bit, we get into kind of, not long, but a significant amount of screen time and story dedicated to Caesar working with the apes building a wall, soldiers being the Alpha Omega zealots. And Caesar
basically
kind of
just some like ape slavery for a bit.
Yes, very much so. Very much so. It's cold. There's torture. Caesar is beaten and starved and all that, and they're just trying to figure out what to do. Maurice and Rocket and Nova with Bad Ape are kind of surveilling the outside. They find some tunnels. They're putting together an idea. Blah 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 blah. But Caesar, and one of the later interactions with the Colonel, they discuss what's going on. Because Caesar has realized that the soldiers that are on their way, that they originally thought were coming to join the Colonel, are not coming to join, but are coming to confront him. And I do like how the Colonel is repeatedly impressed by how smart that ape is, because that would freak me out.
He's willing to adjust his, like, because like a lot of our antagonists, like I said last week, are real dumb, and they insist that apes cannot be intelligent,
and they underestimate them.
Yeah, and this one he's like, "Oh, I underestimated you."
It's like, damn,
I continue to underestimate you. I will adjust my expectations. Like,
and Woody Harrelson, great performance. The movies that I know of him from, typically, I know he's in a lot of stuff, but it was like Hamish from Hunger Games and that one mentalist guy from Now You See Me, and he's like in maybe, I don't know, what, 8 or 9 scenes in this. He got jacked for this. He put in the work. Like, he looks good.
He's terrifying in this role, honestly.
He's a spooky ass villain. But the reason why the soldiers are coming to confront him is revealed is because he's been killing off soldiers because they've been getting sick. Yeah. And it's because,
but like, yeah, give the reason.
I want to build it up because the medic that tended to his son that got sick, that he then killed because he's such a hard ass, theorized that the virus mutated and is now having a detrimental effect on the human brain. He says it very metaphorically, that it steals away their humanity, that it makes them primitive, which it basically does. I like the idea that it's so aggressive now that it's doing the opposite of what it was intended for. But I got so stupidly excited when they did this, because he kept saying how they stopped speaking, and I was like, oh my god. Because like Rise is like, look at this really cool plant that we put in this pot of Planet of the Apes, and Dawn is like, look at this plant that has grown into its own thing. There's not a whole lot of references to Planet of the Apes anymore. It's become its own story.
Crazy references.
And then like all of a sudden it curls back and it's like Planet of the Apes, like it's building the Planet of the, like we found a reason to bring back like why the humans would be mute, why they would be less intelligent. And I'm like, oh my god, they found a way to do it.
Yeah, so not only are they building the Planet of the Apes where the humans are mute, even though they seem to have all the, physical necessary things. We're seeing reduced human population because of the first movie's consequences. We're like, it's suddenly all coming together.
It's all coming together.
I love that it took this long. Like, if you know anything about me when it comes to stories, slow burn is the way to go. World building, build it up slow. Even like relationships, like I want to see it grow and develop in the most natural way possible. I want something to happen, and I go, how could it be otherwise? But I didn't see it coming. Like, and this mutation is the perfect,
brilliant
way.
I love
to do
it so
but
much.
I want to say,
yes,
the way that the Colonel presents it immediately has flaws, and very intentionally, which is wonderful, because the Colonel says it's stealing their humanity. And in this version, he is saying because they cannot speak, they become primitive. He assumes that they become animalistic when they lose their ability to speak. But we have seen from Nova that she is intentional and intelligent, and it doesn't take a leap of logic to know that she has what everybody else has.
She's absolutely sick. And see, that's why I wanted to discuss Nova, because I don't have a lot to go on here, because like it's not just that they lose the ability to speak. They definitely lose, I thought, some mental faculties. It's with the Colonel, it's ambiguous because he may be drunk. It's hard to tell. But I thought because Nova was clearly more intentional and clearly still intelligent, she learned sign language. The apes teach her sign language.
Yes.
I thought maybe she was patient zero with the mutation. I know that's a bit of a stretch because the Colonel's son got sick like 10 months ago, and who knows if they were ever interacting. I know that's a stretch, but I thought maybe that was another way to make her a significant character and why she'd be different.
Was one of, because like the Colonel says that he ordered his men to kill all who were sick.
She's definitely the kid of a soldier, for sure.
Yeah.
But I thought maybe she was patient zero. I don't think she is. I think I don't know
if they're going to do anything with this idea in the future. It feels like they probably should. But my read on it, honestly, was that in this movie, they are not equating language to sentience, which is a little different from previous films. Because in the first one, the apes are given... In our human perspective, the apes are given humanity by their ability to build their society with language and by their ability to have science and all this, and religion as well, and all that stuff. And Taylor has to compete to be among them by proving that he has language. So language is the evidence that he has sentience, that he is this civilized being. Whereas in these movies that we've been watching, the apes communicate primarily through sign language, which is a rudimentary language. I mean, it has complexity to it, but it doesn't even have like a really official grammatical structure. There's a way you're supposed to order things, but it's not like you can it's not in the same complexity of spoken language as grammar. And then they have the characters who are leaders beginning to speak, but it's only the characters really that are leaders or that are humans.
Yeah.
And I feel like Nova is the final sort of evolution of this, where Nova cannot speak. She's physically incapable, and yet she learns as we go through the movie with her. She becomes more and more intentional in her choices as we go through the movie. So I feel like they're actually arguing that you don't need spoken language to prove sentience.
That's nice. See, okay, then am I wrong in interpreting it that the virus is making them less intelligent? Because that's how
that was my assumption. I think the Colonel is wrong. I think the Colonel assumed that because his son could not speak, he was inferior and primitive, and he shot him.
Okay. Because I thought...
Or he can learn otherwise.
I thought, again, because of where they end up being with Planet of the Apes and how it's not just that they can't talk, it's like... Because like you said, and again, how I was interpreting it, nothing happens to their vocal cords. They are capable of speech. They lose like the brain ability to do it. But again, as I never considered this, Nova is taught sign language, and the Colonel does kill himself.
Yes, that was my final piece.
They are aware. Okay, so maybe I've watched this 3 or 4 times and I didn't consider that enough. So something happens mentally, but it's not as intense as I thought. But it's still cool that they did bring it down to can't speak level, which is cool. So it'll be interesting to see what that does after 300 years, because they are still wearing clothes in the next movie.
And that's the thing, is like I could totally see that devolving a culture, but I think that leaves us in a slightly different place than in the previous like franchise or previous series of movies, because I think in Planet of the Apes, you are supposed to assume that humans are animalistic. Yeah. Like, they are wearing clothing, but that might just be because...
That's because it's a movie in the 70s, and we gotta pass the censor.
So I think this could be, like so many things in this franchise, a new version of what we've seen before, where, yes, they cannot speak. We are meeting that world where it originally was inspired by, right? But it's different. It has a complexity to it that is based off of these essentially prequels to this world that we've been working with, right?
It turns out to be fantastic prequels. Like, I mean, damn, Lucas, you could have taken notes. This is how you build up. This is how you do prequels. Slow burns. But no, I agree.
Please don't make your character go from golden child to evil in one movie. I can't do that.
Not just one movie. Right. 2 days. We're not talking about Star Wars. We're not talking about. I can't do it. Can't do it. Nope. Okay. Anyway. Yes. Not only though is all that great, how the Colonel gets sick in the end, brilliant. Because it's off the cuff of this beautiful scene where Nova sneaks barely into this compound where people are suddenly not paying attention at all to give Caesar food. Yeah, that's again one of those things I think that kind of slips through the cracks. Like none of you noticed this. None of you noticed this. Fine. She gives Caesar food and water, and it's so sweet because she goes over to the apes, and the apes give her the grain, and then she walks over, gives it to him, and she gives him the doll, and then she's in danger, so Rocket sacrifices himself. He doesn't die. Just want to clarify that. But he does get captured. That ends up working in their favor. But she brings him the doll, and the Colonel touches the doll, and it's like, oh, you're screwed.
Well, there's blood on the doll, too.
I do wish they would have elaborated on that.
It's very cool to see that Nova's kindness is what infects the Colonel, because I don't feel like that's commentary on any of the characters' actions per se, but it is so Planet of the Apes that this little action would have an inevitable consequence that changes the game, and there's no going back, there's no fixing it, there's no last minute cure that changes things. Like, it's what it is.
Oh, it's so good. I love it. And then the escape sequence is great. I love all that too, where they're planning it out, so they're counting the steps, and they're digging, and Bad Ape is freaking out, and Maurice roars at him. That's fantastic. Also, I don't know his name, but like the new ape buddy we meet in prison that's kind of helping Rocket, he's fucking terrifying. I'm sorry. He is... Do you know who I'm talking about? He's spooky as heck. That new chimp... He's terrifying to look at. He's really the only other distinguishing looking one.
Well, Lake is there, but...
Oh, well, Lake is there. Lake is great, but this other guy that's like working with Rocket, he's a monster. But it's how they get the keys from the guard. I like that we're now like 10 ape movies in, and the most dramatic thus far, to be honest, the most dramatic is the first time we have apes flinging shit, I think. Yeah. And it's narratively like used, like it's a plot, like, not a plot point, but it's a tool that's used. Like, well on. Good on you. Good on you guys. Well played.
And like, I don't know. It's such a good scene. And then for a moment you kind of feel like, hey, maybe that's the end of the movie. Maybe that's it. But of course, timing, the other humans arrive.
Yeah, of course. When they're escaping.
Yeah, escaped. And now they're in the middle of a battlefield between two sets of humans, trapped behind some rocks. And Caesar doesn't really even know what's happening because he's having his moment with the Colonel, where we find the Colonel sick. He decides that he's going to kill himself. Caesar has the moment where he's like, I'm going to kill you. And he's like, no, I can't do it.
I'm going to do it. Like, it's not worth it.
And then the Colonel's like, fine, I'll do it, and kills himself. And then that's when he realizes what's going on with everybody else, and that's what I feel like we got to mention, the reference on the gas tank, because it's incredible. So in Beneath the Planet of the Apes, there's this atomic bomb that the human survivors worship, and it's called the Alpha and the Omega, and that's what they call themselves in this the troop in this movie call themselves like the Alpha and the Omega. They have a little chant about how the beginning and the end. They've got the little Greek letters on everything. And on one of the like fuel like train cars, there's a graffiti that you read earlier if you're paying attention that says the beginning and the end, and it has big Alpha and Omega letters on it. And in order to save his people, Caesar decides he's going to blow that up.
And even though it's not a nuke,
the bomb blows up.
Yep, and it does cause an avalanche that wipes out all of the humans. Beautiful. And Red kind of has a little bit of a redemption. He blows up Preacher.
Mm-hmm.
and then immediately dies because again we can't have any gorillas. They overdo it, right? Like they kill 3 gorillas in this movie because they don't really kill any named gorillas in the last one. They gotta make up for lost time, which is why you do this to me? But then we get into Avalanche because of course no one can have a good day. And
well, it is interesting because like for a moment you think Caesar's not going to make it out because everyone like the army, the invading army after the explosion just walks in and takes the fort.
Yeah.
But
and then
Caesar's
one guy
like,
turns and he's like,
over here.
He's not even sneaking. He just stands up straight when they win. And this guy is like, is that an ape? It's like, yeah, it is. But
I guess I'm going to shoot it.
Yeah.
But Caesar's looking up at the mountain. And I know since there was just an explosion, that's not good for a lot of people.
Probably not a good thing. We do have to mention he was shot by Preacher.
That's true. Yes.
And this is again, I think a little bit of really like I don't hate it, but so Caesar is shot. Mm-hmm. There's an arrow in him because he breaks it in half. Like he doesn't remove it; he just removes the part that's sticking out. Then, because the apes have won and all the humans are gone, they go on their long journey. Remember, Rocket and Blue, I said it was a long journey. At least I would say a couple of days. Across the desert, all the apes with Nova. They get there, it's beautiful. Doesn't quite look like where the apes are in the original, which is fine, but it's like similar. You know it can't be where they are because there's no way they walked from San Francisco to New York because that's where the other one takes place. Anyway, they get there and Caesar dies. Like, just like you made it to, like, I understand the narrative importance of he pushed through to as soon as he knew that they were safe and secure and then he could rest. I get that. I don't think it's done here as flawlessly as maybe it could have been, if you know what I mean.
I hear that. I'm not mad about it because so much of this movie is poetic almost.
It is. It definitely is.
But you're totally right because the first thought I had when he sort of like winces from his wound, I was like, oh, that's still a problem. How did you make this journey? How are you just now dying from it? How are you dying the moment you make it to the other place?
Yeah, and like he winces and Maurice notices. It's like, no one noticed for 2 days? Not once. Really? Not once.
And so like, it's not super realistic, but I mean, the moment itself ends up being really, really beautiful. So
it is. It absolutely is.
I decided not to let the questions bother me.
Yeah,
when I watched it. And I almost cried again.
Oh no, definitely, especially
because Maurice gives one little tear, right? And I wrote down, "Can apes cry?" And then I just went, "I can."
Yeah. And I love that. Look, Maurice talks at the end. Like we get lines from Maurice, like, son will know who Caesar was and what he did for us. Like, I love all that. And then he slowly just lays down to rest. And then it ends. And we have this amazing trilogy of movies about fucking talking apes, and we watch the protagonist's life from beginning to end, and it's beautiful and amazing. And I love it. And I didn't know they were going to make more movies when this ended. I'm so excited that they have. And I cannot wait for the next one. That's out right now.
I am still kind of like, just watching this one today.
Yeah.
I'm very much caught up in the feelings of this one. I'm like, I was not ready to lose like Blue Eyes specifically because I thought he was going to be the next character. I thought he was going to step up and lead. And so and then like watching Caesar go through all that and then the stuff going on with like the disease, and then I like the amount of setup and like references that we get to the original series in this movie. I was like, there's so much going on. And I want to know, like, I don't know if you know the answer to this, but like, what else has Matt Reeves done? Because these
are Batman.
Excellent. Oh, really?
Which is really funny. We were talking about that earlier. I don't know all of what he's done, but yeah, he did the Batman.
Okay, well that was also a good one. So.
Yeah. Do you feel weird now being a movie nerd and you had never seen most of these movies up until this point?
Kinda, yeah. I mean, I think, if I'm going to be honest, I've tried to provoke some conversation with people I know who know movies, and they don't have much to say about these. And I have to
It's
wonder if maybe this is like the classic that everybody says they've read but actually hasn't. Like, because
it's definitely one of those things that everybody knows of, but it is kind of, I wouldn't even say it's an acquired taste. It's just, I think it's weird enough that it is kind of niche. Now, if you're into sci-fi, it's not. But I think you can't be casually into sci-fi. It's,
Okay.
I mean, I think even if you are aware of the movies, I would wager, like, someone knows that Planet of the Apes exists. Fine. Maybe you know that Charleston Heston was in it. I doubt they know Zaius, Cornelius, Zira, Virgil. Like, they're not going to know the names. I would imagine most people now know that the newest ones have Andy Serkis in them. And
Yes.
they don't know Maurice. Like, you know, like, they don't know that. Because it's like, I think there is probably a little bit of, I don't care about those movies. They're about talking apes, or let's say talking monkeys, because people are stupid. And it's unfortunate because like this is kind of not an underdog, but it is a phenomenal slept on trilogy of movies. Like there aren't that many trilogies that are this good. Like
I think it's really good.
it's
Like,
very good.
I think I would have liked these regardless, but I'm really glad that we started from the beginning and worked our way forward, because I feel like that really
It
like
helps,
gave
doesn't
a
it?
lot of it context and meaning, because these movies are really fantastic, but knowing what the intention of the original movie was, and then seeing how that's been used and developed in so many different iterations of the story, I think that makes these even better, because it's using those same, like, in the most interesting way. I've been trying to figure out a way to say this, and I really haven't figured it out yet. But in the most interesting way, these movies take all the themes from the original movie and kind of turn them on their head a little bit, but they still feel really genuine and true to the original intention. Like, I'm
Yes.
usually bothered when an adaptation goes pretty far from the original, because I feel like a lot of the times they're not respecting the original intention of the author. Here, I feel like the intentions are so respected, and the conversation
Right.
is being added to and investigated, and yet nothing about them is really the same as the previous movies. So I don't know how he did it, but
Yeah.
it's excellent and I love it.
I think I said in one of the previous weeks, especially Rise, Dawn, and now War 4. They're an essay on how to do reboots right. And it's going to be weird in a couple of years because we will have we'll have a whole rebooted franchise. I don't think anything like that really exists quite yet, except for like cartoons. Like there's multiple different versions of X-Men and Spider-Man and blah 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 blah, but like two fully different movie franchises that are the same, but they're also not. Like, you can't even argue that Star Trek is that, because it is connected to the existing canon.
And it very intentionally mimics in a lot of ways what the original does.
Exactly. Right.
Whereas
Yeah. Like,
this is taking the same ideas and just rethreading the loom. Like
it's
crazy.
very interesting. It's very interesting. And I am very excited to see it move forward. I am waiting for either this new human character or a later human character to end up being one of the astronauts that got lost in space all the way back in Rise. You want to talk about slow burns?
Oh wow, that would be impressive.
I'm thinking that's what they got to do, right? I mean, they absolutely will do something with that. But that's for later. We'll find out next week, at least, if this new character, I believe her name is May, we'll find out what her deal is. But as far as War for the Planet of the Apes is concerned, 'tis a whale.
Tis a whale.
Tis
Absolutely.
a whale. Tis a whale. Ah, love Planet of the Apes. Okay, real quick, last thing. We're already at an hour. Like in 40 seconds, we are at an hour. But of the ones we've watched now, all of them, which one would you say is your favorite?
Oh gosh. I really like the original one. But War might be my favorite.
Cool. See, I'm torn between the first one and Rise. I love the slow burn that is Caesar rising to being Caesar and the escape and all that. I love it. It's so good. But that's where we're at. And that's over. Thanks for listening. Come back next week. Bye.
Bye.